Actually, after an election in Bukedea and a letter from the president complaining about malpractice in elections. We just had another by-election today, and as you've been watching on the news updates on NBS TV and on Nile Post and other platforms here, we're also going to keep updating you on what is happening in Lira, in Oyam, where an election has just happened today to replace the late Minister Sam Ngola. My name is Charles Mongo Shampagi, and let me introduce Charles Ngola, not Sam Ngola. People keep making that mistake. Charles Ngola Machodwogo. Let me introduce the panel that I have to discuss elections and the violence that comes with them, the rigging and the allegations of rigging, and what this means for the country. From the extreme end, from the Forum for Democratic Change. From the Forum for Democratic Change, Secretary General of that political party, President of Bugisu Cooperative Union, and Member of Parliament for Budadiri East Constituency, the Honorable Nathan Nandala Mafavi. Very nice to have you, sir.
Thank you. It is Budadiri West.
Budadiri West. Thank you.
Thank you. You're right to say President of Bugisu because they used to be called by early-on presidents. Until Amin asked a question, you mean there are more than one president in Uganda? So that's how they changed chairman.
I'm told even all the presidents of Rotary Club, presidents of everything, ended.
University.
That Makerere University was not supposed to have a president. He's been a tourist within the country, posing with lions, having lunches in Bushenyi, and keeping us updated on Twitter. I don't know if he has not joined Threads. Threads, I think, is the newest fad now, launched by Meta. Meta, which is from Facebook. Frontliner, Ofono Opondo, he lives in Mukono, but comes from Molanda. He is the Chief Executive Officer at the Uganda Media Center. Very nice to have you, sir.
Thank you, Charles, and our viewers. You know, swinging from Mulanda to Kasese to Bushenyi, it's quite a good experience.
If you want to follow live what's happening in Oyam, go to Afro Mobile, NBS Live, bringing you live updates, but also keep interrupting programming here to give you updates, and possibly and hopefully we will give you the declaration once it is made, because tallying is going on. I have from Kasanda, the District Woman Member of Parliament. Honorable, most welcome.
Thank you very much, Charles. Good evening, viewers. And
from Kira Municipality, from the Forum for Democratic Change, spokesperson, the Honorable Ibrahim Ssemujju Nganda. Yes, sir?
Good evening, viewers.
You've been very humble. What's it? What are you cooking up? Okay. We need to begin with an update from Oyam. I don't know if our colleague is already online, but we will get him to you as soon as we find him. Yeah. Let me start with this. Crispin Kaheru, commissioner at the Uganda Human Rights Commission, tweeted just this afternoon and said, but why, really, why? He's questioning what is going on with elections. Let me link that with the letter dated 26th of June, 2023. That's exactly about 7 days ago. Brigadier General Henry Isoke, Head State House Anti-Corruption Unit, Kampala. Brief on Bukedea District Chairperson by-election held on 14th June 2023. I have got some disturbing information about the recent by-election in Bukedea for LC5 Chairperson, where our NRM candidate won with 91%. Yes, with 91% of the vote. And the voter turn-up was 87%. I was, of course, happy for my party to perform so well. However, I'm now getting information that government officials on the night of the nomination invaded the house of Mr. Omagor, confiscated his academic papers, and stole shillings 163 million from him so that he could not be nominated the following morning. The Electoral Commission had to extend the nomination days when he appealed. Even then, when he went for nomination, he was attacked at the gate of the Electoral Commission. Come election morning, government officials invaded the polling stations and voted on behalf of the voters. This sounds like a film. However, I want to be sure that Uganda does not go back to the crime of 1980 with Mwanga elections that forced us to go to the bush. Therefore, investigate these claims, and if any criminality was committed, take action and report back. Such actions are not only electoral offenses, they are also criminal. I am therefore directing you to handle the criminals. Signed, Yoweri K. Museveni, President. It is copied to His Excellency, Her Excellency the Vice President, the Right Honorable Speaker of Parliament, the Right Honorable Prime Minister, Secretary General of the National Resistance Movement, Chairperson Electoral Commission, and the Inspector General of Police. That was on 26th of June, 2023. Today, we had an election in Oyam. And if you saw the clip that we began with, looks like things are not so different from what we have seen happening there. Let me start with Ofono Pondo and ask the question. The president communicated just a few days ago concerns about Bukedea. The information we're getting from Oyam don't seem much different. What has gone wrong?
I don't know about Oyam because the whole day today I've been on the road. I haven't spoken to the NRM people or anybody I know there as yet, so I don't know about Oyam. But as for Bukedea, it is right for the president, when he gets information, to direct investigations. Hopefully the investigations will be productive in the sense that the allegations the president is saying he has received will be unearthed, will be found to be true. But before the president wrote the letter, myself, I met somebody from Bukedea, actually an RDC, who told me verbally at that time that in Bukedea, of course the roughing up of Mr. Magor was covered by the media, his shirt was torn, but also surprising, 130 million for an LC5 candidate.
160.
What is the money doing in the House at that time on the eve of nomination? Because I think nomination is something like 2 million.
But Mr. Pondo, you're aware, as well as everyone else, that one of the major concerns about Ugandan elections is that they become highly commercialized. That we have had reports of people spending as high as $1 billion shillings for a parliamentary...
That's true.
Yes.
But I think in Uganda of today, you can put that money in the bank, even if you wanted to use it for bribing voters. You can put on your phone, you can keep calling from your bank using a mobile banking system, and because you are not going to dish out 130 million in one night. This was a nomination, not yet even the campaigns. So even that one is questionable. Somebody making that allegation that a candidate for LC5 chairperson in a rural district like that one, making the, I take that with a pinch of salt, the amount. But the main point is, why would anybody attack a prospective candidate, steal their documents?
The president's letter is very clear. Government officials raided.
No, so I was telling you, because Mr. Magor has, that time when the media covered him, and yesterday, he has made a claim that they were policemen from Bukedea police station. This is what Mr. Magor says. And he gives that as the reason why he did not report to Bukedea police station. He instead chose to go and report to Soroti regional office. So that should be pretty easy to find if indeed there are policemen from Bukedea, because he should be able to know them, because that's where he lives. And if there are police officers from Bukedea police station, he should be able to identify them, and I think that shouldn't be a big issue. But the point I'm making is, why would anybody go and physically block a candidate from being nominated? And who are these government officials? What stake, for example, a policeman, what stake does he have in that election, apart from ensuring law and order? But I was saying that that RDC I met told me that in Bukedea, in that election, voting at many polling stations closed by 10 a.m., which again is strange. How can all voters turn up by 10 and vote? This is what this RDC told me. So it looks like there were hands of bigger people in the government or in the political arena who, and of course this is not isolated. We have had many elections, many by-elections, where similar things have happened. We had the controversies in Kayunga. We just had controversies in Serere, you remember, where Honorable Cooper actually was arrested because he was supporting another candidate, put in the cells. I think he was released after voting. Now, if somebody can put, because that is his constituency, he's not a stranger. That's his constituency, that's his district. He's a known person. So why would somebody block an MP from that constituency from supporting whoever he wants? And as you know, no charge, to the best of my knowledge, has been brought against him in courts of law. So it seems to me that as NRM and the government, we are losing marks.
What has gone wrong? Did you imagine that would be in this situation?
For Parliament, for example, NRM already has 395 members. So this do and die that we must win every election. I can't understand where that is coming from.
Okay, let's
and
put
so NRM really needs to pull up its socks. I don't see any two-way. We can't make a policy.
The president warns that. I think he's saying we shouldn't. He doesn't want to imagine a situation where the country goes back to the 1980 election that forced him and colleagues to go to the bush to come back this way. What we're hearing from Oyam, police was reporting they arrested people distributing money. They arrested them with 150,000 that they had as balance. They were giving 5,000 to voters. A gang of armed people went to a polling station, fired tear gas, grabbed ballot papers, ticked them, and stuffed them in the box during broad daylight. Let me bring in...
But you see, like
yes.
the tear gas, the only institution that has tear gas is the police.
Yes.
Even the army doesn't have tear gas. So, and the police there is command. So that also should be easy to establish.
So you think that people had forgotten the president's letter just a few days ago?
No. I think there's just rising cases of impunity, which within the government, but also within the NRM, and therefore the NRM has no choice but to act firm, because these are isolated These are few elements.
Why would the president
may
write to the head of the anti-corruption unit of State House?
I don't know why he did so. The choice was his. He's the commander-in-chief. But I think the appropriate authority should have been the police.
Okay.
But as you know, if in this case, police is I don't have the full details of who was reported to the president to have stolen. But if I take from Mr. Magor, maybe it is because police is being mentioned.
Let me bring the other panelists in. I apologize, I didn't fully introduce the Honorable Flavia Nalule, who's Kasanda District Woman Member of Parliament. Kalule. Kasanda District Woman Member of Parliament, and she is from the National Unity Platform. Honorable, my apologies. And chairperson of the Women's League of that political party. Honorable, my apologies.
It's okay.
The candidates in Oyam North constituency who are battling to replace the late Honorable Kano Charles Okello Engola Machodwogo are from the Uganda People's Congress, Dr. Eunice Apio Okuto, from the National Resistance Movement, Samuel Engola Okello, son to the late minister and member of parliament for that constituency, from the Forum for Democratic Change, Freddie Newton Okello, and from the National Unity Platform, Daniel Okello. So it's a fairly long list of candidates there, but a lot of chaotic scenes, and my colleague Benson Ongomu will be joining us later. And for that election in Bukedea, it was Mary Akot who won that election against Omagor, which provoked the letter that the president wrote. Let me bring in Honorable Kalule. What does this say about elections in this country?
Thank you very much, Charles. Really, I want to first sympathize with Mr. Omagor for the brutality vetted on him right before nominations and right in front of the Electoral Commission officers, a few meters away from police officers, and yet he did not get any help at that time. I think our elections, we've clarified and we've verified that Ugandan elections mean war. It's a war zone. Because this is not the first time we are seeing respectable leaders being turned into chicken thieves, looking like chicken thieves, as if they've just been battered by some mob of angry people over stealing something from them. We saw the Honorable Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, the president of the NUP, with a very good suit, right on his nomination day, moving in for nominations, coming out, and at the end of the day, in tattered clothes. The same person, the same applies to our spokesperson of the NUP. Nomination day of the presidential candidate. So we have also seen the FDC president, Poa. Nomination day, walking into elections for nomination without shoes.
No, he walked in
with one shoe.
With one shoe.
With one shoe, yes. Walking in with just one shoe. So now we are seeing that even the image of the people that are supposed to contest and are supposed to lead this country is being marred right from the beginning.
What has gone wrong?
What has gone wrong is a number of things. This letter, first of all, Ugandans are just tired of the elections. There is that high civic apathy when it comes to elections, although we keep going back into elections because we have a system we have to fulfill. But for me, the first thing I would look at right now, the facts of that letter that Mr. Museveni wrote, first of all, we are even wondering why he's writing this letter now. This letter should have come earlier because we are wondering whether he has just realized that elections are marred by a lot of violence in this country. But I also want to remind Ugandans that it's not the very first letter of its kind that he has written. In 2015, I think he wrote a letter to the Electoral Commission. By then it was Mr. Chigundu, who was the commissioner. He wrote a letter to him, a very scathing letter. The first one was in private, and then the less scathing one was made public, where he was condemning him for an election he claimed the opposition had rigged. And of course, that we saw the introduction of RDCs coming in elections to supervise, I guess, the work of the NRM, you know, and the Electoral Commission in one way or the other. But of course, this has turned into a deplorable state, and now creepingly we have, and gradually, and every time we see RDCs deeply engaged in elections, yet they came in at the time to rescue their losses because they were having so many losses by then. I think for me, that time, his point being, there was a lot of electoral violence, and then he needed to do something about it. But that letter didn't mean anything at that time because we saw that happening constantly. So I also don't think this letter means anything right now. He's simply writing, in my perspective, he's simply writing to appease some people, either to show face that he's following up on the democracy and is interested in good and clean elections, fair and all that. But really, just writing a letter is merely paying lip service to democracy, and I call it just making our democratic tale
just heading into
something.
the 2001 elections, 2021 elections, your party said elections can deliver democratic change. Then the election ended, delivered you to be the leading party in parliament. You picked up some local council seats, and then elections, you're complaining that elections can't change politics in this country.
But Charles, we know that the dynamics between a general election and a by-election are totally different. With the general election, and that's what the general election we are in, a general election, you see the state machinery and its thieving, lever is extremely well strained. So they can't really concentrate on one tiny constituency to bring out all their apparatus and bring out all the injustice. But also in general elections, we usually have what you call, in this case, it was the people power movement. We always have those big sweeping movements or ideas that usually hold a country together and bring us together so that you can be able to articulate and push for that commonality that you are always looking for as a country. So it's quite different from a by-election where the state and all its machinery has time to mobilize, demobilize, beat up, batter, murder, steal, rig stuff, intimidate, put on gunpoint the polling officers, and even close a polling station by 10 a.m.
How has your candidate fared so far from what you're hearing?
Our candidate is, so far, what I am hearing is that he's in the third place.
Third place?
Yes, he's in the third place, but also that being a constant without putting in consideration all the factors that have happened, because the vote rigging also engulfed him, because also our polling agents were going through the same thing. About 64 polling stations in Oyam have been, the polling agents were thrown away, the ballots were stuffed. So going back also to the letter that you are talking about, the other factor I wanted to state...
Let's get to Benson Ngom, who is in Oyam. Benson, good evening. Good evening, Benson. We can see you. We are not hearing from you.
Good evening, Charles. I can hear you. Actually, I can hear the studio, so I can hear you.
Great. You've had a long day with the elections there. Could you bring us up to speed on what is going on at the moment? And first, tell us where you are exactly, your current location, and bring us up to speed on what is going on.
Charles, currently I'm at YAM headquarters where the tallying center is, the Electoral Commission tallying center, and in between 30 to 1 hour from now, we should be getting results for the Member of Parliament elect for YAM North constituency. But what I can tell you is there's a neck-to-neck tallying that is coming in from the NRM candidate, Okello Samuel Ngola, and also the UPC candidate, Dr. Eunice Apio. From the results we've been able to hear incoming from the tallying center here and from different polling stations, that is what we are. But the day has been a very stressful day, Charles, if you're to ask me. It started with a very heavy downpour in the morning. Of course, it affected the turnout, but also to say that from the elections that I've been able to cover, this has been one of the worst elections in terms of turnout. The turnout has been extremely low. Now, the downpour took some time until 10 to 11 a.m. in the morning. Some other places rain until midday, and this affected turnover. And by midday 11, in some of the polling stations that we went to, you could get the people that are in the queue 1, 2, 3, or 4. That tells you how the election was. But also there were chaotic scenes that we have been able to observe today, especially in one of the sub-county called Wanglonyo, where it's alleged that some people came with a UP, which is the Uganda police truck, and did pre-ticked some of the ballot papers, and they stuffed them, and the people were aware on what was happening. Again, they stopped it. The Electoral Commission, one of the Electoral Commission commissioner went to the side and stopped the election, and that's where you could see that chaotic scene from the UPC president, Honorable Jim McKenna, and Tango Doi, the EC chair for NRM. That was a very chaotic scene, but also from the reports that we got from the opposition candidates from yesterday to today, they're reporting intimidation cases, also threats on them. The NUP candidate specific, Daniel Okelo there, was very bitter with Dr. Tango Doi, almost exchanged blows in one of the polling stations. He says it's been rigged. Of course, right now, from what we're hearing, it seems to be number 3 from the tallings that is coming through. We're yet to confirm from Election Commission. So you really can tell how stressful it has been. But also from what we've been able to observe, I think in some polling stations, security did not do quite well, especially in protecting the votes, but also hearing the concern. Many times, Charles, if you're for a by-election, by this time you could see the Electoral Commission chair and the commissioners from Electoral Commission already seated. We have not been able to see that. Their chairs have remained empty. I don't know whether they've traveled or they're watching or they're getting reports from the returning officer of Yam district. That is something we've been able to observe. But inside behind me there, we have the party president of UPC already in. The candidate is already in. From the NRM structure, we have seen Dr. Tango Doi come in a bit and get out. This is very unusual from what we see most times when the NRM win. These are some of the observations we have been able to see. But by and large, Charles, the turn-up has been extremely low. But also, if to take you to the campaigns that have been here, I think it has been a massive 2 weeks of campaign to 3 weeks of campaign. You have seen all the principles of the party campaigning here. Robert Chagulanji, the National Unity Platform, came here, campaigned for the candidate as well. We have seen Patrick Oboya Moriatu, who really sat here almost for 5 days campaigning for the candidate. Jimmy Akena has been on ground from day one. But one of the things that we have been able to observe as well, Charles, is the absence of the UPC members of parliament. It's quite weird because members of parliament from UPC, which are greatly in Lao sub-region, many times in such an election, you see them pouring. The member of parliament for Yam South, who is Honorable Beta Moya, has not been here. Honorable Santa Lum, who is the woman member of parliament, also UPC, we have not been able to see her on ground. We asked the party president whether he is bothered about the absence of some of the top party members from UPC and in parliament. He says they're giving their support. And he told us that this is a trick election because some of them were really close with the late Ngola, so we could not see them because of that reason. But those are some of the observations we saw. But also, just to wind it up, when we saw the chair of NRM come to campaign for the candidate there, one of the things that I've not seen often when the president is campaigning for a candidate is the president took a long time. Out of the 1 hour campaign time, it took almost 45 minutes speaking about him, about the successes, and then he spoke 15 minutes about the candidate. That's, again, speaks something about what we saw. But generally, we have seen the campaigns have been massive. The parties, the political parties, the opposition party, the NRM has been on ground. The secretariat from the NRM, Honorable Dombo has been here. Honorable Seninde has been here. Honorable Richard Todwong, I've been told, is still here. Honorable Amson Obua has been here, also campaigning. So it tells you how really the NRM wanted this, or wants this position as well, and also how deep the UPC wants this position. Don't forget, Lao sub-region is greatly UPC, and I think the conversation we have been able to hear, Charles, is whether the opposition understand the politics of numbers. Because somebody was earlier on, even during the debate that we had, says, what if the opposition parties had left this a slot for the UPC? Because UPC is grounded in Lao sub-region, and you could even tell from the numbers of UPC members of parliament who are in that house. So it's a tricky election. We are just here in 30 minutes or an hour. We will be able to know who has won the election. 167 polling stations. We are with about 90,733 registered voters. That is what is happening behind me, Charles. Anytime from now, we should be knowing the next member of parliament for Oyam North constituency, Charles.
Thank you very much, Benson. One quick question. Could you bring us up to speed on reports of election violence, particularly the areas that had Away Core Trading Center, where we were told there was some commotion earlier in the day. Could you tell us what kind of commotion that was? And also, so the police reporting that they had arrested some people who were distributing money.
I think there's a lot of cross-accusation coming from the different parties. Of course, the police have come out to say that they arrested one of the chairmen or electoral agent of the UPC who they allege to be having money by that time. But also, if you speak to the UPC members, they say it was intimidation because the chair actually carried money to help for lunch for agents. But also, when you had, if you had had our debate with the UPC candidate earlier, because one of the things she brought very clearly says even the bikes they had secured for the agents to help them move in between and do a bit of surveying and what is happening within the polling stations were confiscated yesterday. Honorable Jim McKenna had to travel from Lira to here. Now, the chaos specifically in 3 places that we were was brought because of allegations of ballot ticking and then staffing. In one of the polling stations where that chaos really happened, if you have seen the video that is trending on Twitter, which I think I'm the one who tweeted earlier on, it shows how Dr. Tango Doi, Jimmy Akena, the president of UPC, some of the members of parliament from Nob, I've seen Hilderman here, and some of the members of parliament really annoyed and getting it almost got physical. I saw the commissioner from Electoral Commission also leave that polling station. But what has been visibly seen also many times, this happened in Soroti by-election, where the EC chair, Simon Biamokama, did come to ground, talk to the members. Today we saw him. But from what we've been able to observe, the opposition members, opposition candidates do say that some of these incidences they are able to report, but they didn't get as much concrete replies from the Electoral Commission. So I think from where we sit and where we're reporting, I think the police needed to do much more, especially on the responses. We saw again, one of the things that we've been able to see in the different by-elections and even general election, the movement of police cars, but also RDC's cars. Today, you could really see them in some of the sub-counties where you see really RDC cars moving. Some of them, the number plates were taken away. Some of them you could really visibly see the number plates, and you would ask yourself, because I remember in Surrey by-election, the EC chair did talk about it, that they don't want to see the RDCs in polling stations and then in polling areas. So it's a huge question, and some of the things that the opposition candidates here have been able to speak about. But by and large, you need to give it to Yam. The campaigns went very peaceful. We didn't see any tear gas, as we have seen in Omoro. We did see when the National Unity Platform did visit the area in Serere, a bit of it. There's a bit of, uneasiness when the party principal did visit. In Soroti East, we saw a lot of it. So in Oyam, it has been slightly peaceful from where we sit until today, where we saw those chaotic scenes, Charles.
One last question. Could you confirm that the other video that's been trending is a video of an election official, I think a presiding officer, alleging that they raided his station, grabbed ballot papers, ticked them in the playground, and came back and stuffed them. 250 ballots, a booklet of 250 ballots. Could you confirm that?
Booklets.
5 booklets of 250 ballots each. Could you confirm that?
Yes, Charles. I can actually confirm that. I can actually confirm that from the conversation we have been able to get from the agents who are seated there. Actually, that returning officer is actually returning officer, but agent of Electoral Commission in that very polling station. I've just been able to have a chat with him on how the day went. He did say they came in an attire, a police attire, and they got the ballot papers, take them, and stuff them back, and says all their phones were confiscated. But again, these are things we've been able also to confirm from the agents who are there and some of the voters who are in that very specific space. That is why the voting in that location didn't go through. The commissioner came through, stopped it. By the time we left around 1 going to 2, voting had stopped there. The Electoral Commission had promised that they are bringing another polling material. I mean the polling, the ballot papers to continue with the voting. That we can confirm for you, Charles.
From Crispin Kaheru, he's an election expert with the African Union, and he's saying it is important to note that where electoral malpractices occurred in the 3 polling stations, Achokora, Bar Omele, and Wanglobo, the Electoral Commission set aside the stuffed ballot boxes and called for new ballot boxes and voting resumed and was concluded. So those were handled immediately. And Crispin Kahero says he thinks that was a positive reaction from the Electoral Commission. We are getting... we have some breaking news, which is actually bad news. We're getting information of a bad accident at Itojo in Ntungamo district involving the director of Aponye Enterprises, Mr. Apollo Nyegamahe. He runs trailers, he deals in grain, one of the biggest grain dealers in the country, and chairman of NRM Ruchiga Ruchiga district, sorry. We understand that Mr. Nyegamahe may have not survived that accident. We're waiting for confirmation of the details of that accident, and we will bring you up to speed as soon as we have more details. But that accident happened this evening, just a few minutes ago, at Itojo in Ntungamo district, and it involved Mr. Apollo Nyegamahe. He is the director of the Aponye group of companies. They deal in transport, in grain, and as well as real estate in Kampala and around the country. We'll bring you up to date with what we're able to find. Yes, I can say the newsroom is able to bring us that breaking news. Mr. Apollo Nyegamahe, commonly known as Aponye, has apparently died in an accident at Itojo just this evening. We will keep bringing you updates of that sad story that we are just getting, and our teams will keep us will keep updating us on what else we know about that accident. Bring it to you. Let's come back to studio. Honorable Nandala Mafavi, you participated in many elections.
I was concluding.
You're concluding?
Yes.
Please, go ahead and conclude.
Thank you. So as I was mentioning some of those facts, the president also mentions there, Mr. Museveni, in his letter, that he really highlights the electoral officials that were involved in the vote rigging and the malpractices in elections, but he's very silent on the candidate. And yet, all these security officers that we usually see beating up people, stuffing ballots, including some key electoral officers, they are always working for one person, the NRM candidate. So what happens to this candidate? I actually think this wasn't an election, and all the results of this election needs to be annulled so that we can have a fresh election
that's just happened in
of
Oyam
Bukedea. But also this election of Oyam, including the by-elections of Kayunga, the by-election of Serere, the by-election of Soroti City, East, those by-elections which we have all seen, because this is no longer electoral malpractices. This is criminality now.
Honorable Kalule, there's been a proposal that the country can't afford or doesn't need to hold by-elections. You're already in Parliament almost coming to 2.5 years now?
Yeah.
2 years? Yes, 2 years, so 3 years to wait. Or, in the alternative, adopt the American system where the party that had a sitting member of Parliament, for the American system it's either a senator or a congressman, nominates someone else to take up their remaining time. Would that work?
I think that would... It's a double-edged sword, in my opinion. You'd look at it this way. Of course, it would work and save the country a lot of money, because at the end of the day, we see all these by-elections. What Dr. Tango Doi is doing is a do-or-die affair, like was saying. The NRM, for some reason, feels like they have the upper hand in every election, and they have to win every election. So for them, they will do anything, and they will forget about their integrity, about their names, about their images. They will do everything to win that election. So if that is the case, then it would be better for them to remain with that election. So what you're proposing would be something that would save the country. First of all, Ugandans are also frustrated by elections. That's why we are seeing less and less observers in there. We are seeing less and less people holding anyone accountable for this. So what happens to all these people? I think all these people that are engaged in the electoral practices need to be brought to book.
Thank you.
And they need to account for all that. Those
Honorable, just indulge me for a minute. Let me bring in Honorable Ssemujju Nganda. What's wrong with the elections? And then I'll come to Honorable Nandala Mafabi.
What's wrong with the elections?
Everything.
You participated in many.
You are the one who has summarized Museveni's letter. Now you're asking what is wrong with the elections. If you allow me, Charles, I am one of those who were surprised that Museveni wrote this letter.
Were you?
I have been trying to understand, but my mind tells me from my background that in some elections, Museveni will sponsor 2 or 3 candidates. I remember I did a story at the Observer when he went to Fort Potro and he instructed late around Nyakairima to help Okwi Rabone, who was independent. And in a meeting he had with Aronda and other military people, he said, we will not help Timayombo's family. So can you help his brother to win this election? And the president speaking to CDF. I have a feeling this guy who was beaten was also a Museveni candidate.
The one of Okedea.
The one of Okedea. So people who beat him may not have known that he was also a Museveni candidate.
I understand 4 policemen have been arrested since.
Yes. Even the money that Ofono Opondo is wondering about, maybe it was money from Museveni, knowing how Museveni works. There was time he got hold of an FDC lady in Teso. Even NRM people were being sent to that FDC lady to pick money. She now became the main person in Teso. But coming to the question that you have asked, first of all, I sympathize with Mr. Museveni. That all along he didn't know that these things are happening in elections. So he woke up one day and he's told people have been beaten, money stolen, government officials critiquing.
Nomination papers stolen.
Yeah, he didn't know, it appears to me. But the same Museveni who is angry with the Bukedea, he went to campaign for an NRM candidate in Arua. His guards of SFC shot Honorable Chagulanyi's driver dead.
Yes,
they arrested everybody, including Honorable Kasiano, who was a candidate, and drove them in the night to Gulu and detained them. And the crime all of them committed is that they had thrown a stone at Museveni's vehicle. Maybe the stone was too big that it needed to be carried by everybody, because people who were arrested were more than 10.
But how would they distinguish who the stone thrower was? They sweep everybody and then sort out.
But everybody was charged. They did not investigate. MPs, you remember Honorable Zake Niare got killed there, the way he was beaten. Later, Museveni said that the beating of Honorable Chagulanyi was very good. I hope you heard that. Museveni saying that this beating of Chagulanyi was very good. He can't be the same Museveni now wondering why this candidate was in Bukedea was beaten. So all the by-election, the question asked what is wrong with by-elections. We are at the tail end of a rogue state, a rogue regime. It has changed actors. If you look at the people with whom Mr. Museveni was running the state, the Kategayas, the Wapakaburo, the Chintomusoka and others, there are things that he would be uncomfortable doing in their presence or when they are still part of government. Even when NRM wanted to cheat an election, they wouldn't do it the way it is being done these days. That entire group is now gone. All people you can consider Museveni is contemporary are finished. They are no longer in government. The ones who were a bit junior at that stage, the Mbabazis, the Vestiges and others, that generation is also gone now. He now has a new generation of the Nabanjas. They did not participate in the Ruwero War. They are not his contemporary that they have shared anything. they want to prove that they can serve the master very well, or even better than the Kategayas. We are now in their hands. I have participated in elections. I have never seen a prime minister who goes to the field and participates in the distribution of money and is proud that they are beating people. You saw Nabanja in Kayunga, you saw Nabanja in Soroti, but also something else is emerging, the warlordism. All these NRM people in their areas, because that's how they get promoted and get appointed, in areas where they come from, whether it is Soroti, Okedea, wherever, they need to deliver some results. If you, in Kayunga, you just change the declaration forms, for us you can even beat candidates. So there is a competition among NRM people to do worse things on behalf of Museveni. And that's the group that he has now. Things can only get worse. I said here last time when we were discussing, I think it was Soroti, that at the beginning, Mr. Museveni would never bribe anyone to take a decision. I don't think there is anyone who can accuse Museveni of bribing anyone when they are extending his stay in power the first time in RC 1991 for another 4 years. I did not hear...
Or 1987. 1989?
Was it 91?
1990.
1990.
He did not have to give anyone money. The people thought that it was justifiable. You come to 2005 and Museveni lines up MPs at Musa Court. We only got to know because they had refused to give Sechko. So he came out crying that for me they have refused to give me. And Anifa Kawe and the group said, you are bad-mannered, we will not give you.
No, he said he arrived at Musa Court
when
and the hands that were distributing money were behind the counter, and he could only see hands coming up and handing over money.
No, him he was told.
And for him he was told
the people he found there were, at least then, I remember, because I was reporting Parliament, the Professor Kagonyerazi, he found those in the line. And you now have a new Museveni who can publicly bribe MPs to take a decision.
That was for lifting term limits?
Yes. The age limit, you have a Museveni invading Parliament, beating up MPs. We survived. The way we were strangled, I thought we were going to die there.
You were beaten?
Yes. Broad daylight. He had actually ordered that there should be no cameras. We are lucky that his people understood or did not want the cameras to go there. He said, no, there will be no live broadcast. That's what they implemented. But he had said no cameras, even the phones should do, because he knew what he was going to do. So from Museveni, whose first extension...
And you're sure that order came from him?
I know.
How do you know?
I was an actor. I was the chief opposition whip. Even when he sent soldiers, we saw them walking from his office. And the implementers of some of the decisions, we are speaking to them. So the order was no cameras, no phones. But them, they changed it to what is acceptable in Parliament. That
so
no
they removed live broadcast?
They said no live broadcast. And they said, if he asked you, we will say, no, we thought you had said live broadcast. Because they also feared that nasty thing is about to happen. So from Museveni, whose first extension is done without bribing anyone, to Museveni who lines up MPs to receive bribes, to Museveni who invades Parliament because he wants a decision to go his way. He cannot be the same Museveni writing to condemn.
We'll come back to that in a moment. As we take a break, let's go back to the breaking news that we had earlier today. The director of Aponye group of companies dealing in grain, soap, mainly maize flour, and chairman of the NRM Ruchiga district, Mr. Apollo Nyagamahe, has died in a road accident at Itojo in Intungamo district this evening. We are still gathering details of how exactly the accident, what exactly happened and what else, and we'll keep giving you updates as we move along with this broadcast. But at the moment, we can confirm that Mr. Nyagamahe died in that accident at Itojo this evening. May his soul rest in eternal peace. We'll take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, I'll start with the Honorable Nathan Nandala Mafavi. We'll be right back.